Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we're taking a look today at some Anaheim Duck rumors as we get into the regular season in 2021-2022. There are some rumors that the Ducks may still be on the lookout for maybe moving out some of their key pieces, and we'll be taking a look at some of those guys in today's video. So, there's a couple big names here. I mean, let's be honest. The top guys that are available in Anaheim doesn't seem like Bob Murray is quite done yet making some moves in this rebuild. Some of the names we've been hearing: Rickard Rakell, Hampus Lindholm, Josh Manson, Kevin Shattenkirk, and John Gibson. And I know some of you may be looking at some of those names, especially the last one, and saying, I thought we were done with this. Maybe not yet. And we're going to take a look at what their role is around the league, what their value is, and what teams may be interested in those players. So we're going to start off with Rickard Rakell. Now, Rickard Rakell has been a favorite player of mine since he's been, throughout his time in Anaheim. Rickard Rakell has really been a guy that the Ducks value a lot. He was the 30th overall pick in the 2011 NHL draft. At 28 years old, he's definitely spent some time in the NHL. He's got 500 games under his belt, 300 points in his career. And considering last season he had a little bit of a down season, a little bit less than his average point totals, he's still valued as a very good player. And I think another good season from a guy like Rickard Rakell, he's definitely going to generate some interest in the trade market. And you look at his best season, 69 points in 77 games. He's been one of those guys, he's never played a full 82-game schedule, which some teams may look at that as a little bit of a liability. But you look at his season, 71 games, 72 games, 71, 77, 69, 65, and 52. So he missed only one game this year here in the 2021 season. So Rickard Rakell is a great top six forward, and he's a reliable guy. He could score goals. He could also kill penalties if you need him to as well. And I think teams see a lot of value in Rakell. And I think Bob Murray does as well. He's asking for a first-round pick and a high-end draft pick in return for Rakell. I think that's one of the key reasons Rickard Rakell is still in Anaheim. It's just teams are not willing to pay that price. Now you look at some of the teams that may be interested in a guy like Rickard Rakell. The Minnesota Wild are a team that I think will definitely be on the hunt for a guy like Rakell. Obviously, the Wild have made it quite clear with what they're doing with Fiala and whatever ends up happening with Kirill Kaprizov. They are going for the Stanley Cup right now. And I think there's a couple other names on their radar, depending on what Montreal does here with this Jesperi Kotkaniemi situation. Because if they keep Kotkaniemi, Carolina, it may still be on the market for another top six forward. Maybe a guy like, Tomas Hertl or Christian Dvorak. Or if Carolina gets Kotkaniemi, Montreal will be looking for a guy like Hertl or a guy like Christian Fischer or Christian Dvorak. Which also means I think the Minnesota Wild are also in that conversation for those two names. But I think another name out west is a guy like Rickard Rakell. He could fit well in that top six with Minnesota. I also have the Montreal Canadiens, as we just talked about. If they lose a guy like Kotkaniemi, maybe they reach out to Bob Murray and see what the price is for Rakell. And you also have the Boston Bruins here. I think the Bruins have shown a lot of interest in not Kotkaniemi. I think the Boston Bruins have shown a lot of interest in Rickard Rakell in the past. I don't know how many times they're going to, swirl around that and just be kind of a shark with their fin in the air and just kind of sense what the situation is. But I think they've definitely had some interest there, especially with the loss of David Krejci going back overseas, back to his home in Czech Republic. I think it's definitely garnered more attention that the Bruins may be more interested in a trade there. And we've seen them make trades in the past, the Ducks and the Bruins, in the not too distant past. We saw them in that big trade with Andre Kasha, Danton Heinen, Nick Ritchie, all packaged up in that big deal. So I wouldn't be that surprised here if the Ducks made a move with the Boston Bruins for Rickard Rakell. Another name we've been hearing about, Hampus Lindholm, a top four defenseman in the NHL. You could argue a top pairing defenseman there on the left side. Hampus Lindholm is another great player. I really like Hampus Lindholm. He's 27 years old, and the Swedish native has now played his 8th NHL season. So he's going into his 9th season in the NHL. He spent only one season with the Norfolk Admirals before going to the NHL. And he's had a really good career in the NHL, putting up his most prolific season, 34 points in 78 games. But he's also had a couple of down seasons. I mean, this past season, he only played in 18 games. So obviously injuries were an issue for Hampus Lindholm, which may have drove down his value, but that may just percolate some of the interest from around the league to maybe go and grab Lindholm, maybe when he's a little bit down in value. And I think that teams will definitely look at a guy like Lindholm as a puck-moving defenseman that can play defense, can also, maybe move the play forward. Hampus Lindholm will definitely draw some interest. I think there are a couple of teams as well, the New York Islanders and the New Jersey Devils in particular, looking to maybe add a left shot defenseman there on the second pair. I think Hampus Lindholm would fit really well on both of those teams, kind of as a mentor for maybe a guy like Damon Severson, and he could also be sort of a mentor for a guy like Noah Dobson on the island for the New York Islanders. So I think those are two teams to keep an eye out for a guy like Hampus Lindholm. Moving along, a little bit of a different dynamic in defensemen. We're looking at Josh Manson. Now, Josh Manson is a guy, 29 years old, so he's a little bit older than some of these other guys. The Illinois defenseman was drafted in the 6th round in 2011, so you see how he has kind of come out of nowhere. Josh Manson played at Northeastern University. He played 2 seasons with the Norfolk Admirals and is now going into his 9th season in the NHL, 8th season in the NHL. So very similar to Hampus Lindholm, but he's played in 400 games, and he's another guy. He had injury issues last season as well, only playing in 23 games last year for the Ducks. But he's another defenseman that has shown he can put up points. He had a 30-point season in 82 games back in the 2017-2018 season. Again, I know we're going back a little bit in time there, but he's a good defenseman. And I think there's some concern that maybe the Ducks haven't been that good, which has made his stats a little bit worse. You look at his first 4 seasons in the NHL, he was a plus defenseman in all of those seasons. The past 3 seasons in the NHL with the Ducks, he has been a minus defenseman for the past 3 years now. So some teams may look at that a little bit as a team stat, which I think you definitely have to attribute a lot of that to. I'm looking at some defensemen. Looking at some teams that would be interested in Josh Manson. I think it's an easy one. The Boston Bruins, I think they'd love to add another grit, big left shot defenseman. I think Josh Manson fits that bill as a second pairing defenseman. And you also have the Calgary Flames, who I think are still reeling a little bit from the loss of guys like Mark Giordano, losing guys like TJ Brody. Yes, they've added a guy like Chris Tanev, but they've lost a lot of their bigger defensemen. Travis Hamonic, another example. So they bring in Nikita Zadorov. You maybe bring in a guy like Josh Manson. That would definitely add some more size to that Calgary Flames blue line. I think that's definitely something they will consider. Another guy I'm throwing in here as well, Kevin Shattenkirk, is a guy who's played a lot of hockey in the NHL, much more on the veteran side of things. He's only 31 years old, though, so there is still some thought he could be a solid third-pairing defenseman. I think that's even a stretch at this point. He's really declined since his time in St. Louis. He's never had that same spark since he left St. Louis. He had a little bit of a spark last year with Tampa, but I think anybody could have done that with Tampa. So he's been a defenseman that's just kind of been hanging around. He's got a high cap hit, and maybe the Ducks are trying to move out that high cap hit. I think there'll be plenty of teams. I couldn't really name one in particular. Teams looking for depth, and I think that's really what you're getting from a guy like Shattenkirk. The problem is he comes in at a steep price, and I think teams just are not willing to give that up. And then the next one, and this is really the big one, and that is the goaltender John Gibson. Now, we've heard from a couple of people that John Gibson maybe hasn't been the most satisfied with the Anaheim Ducks and the rebuild situation, and he may be a guy that finds his way out. According to Eric Stevens, it's impossible to know whether John Gibson will ask to be dealt. He's been frustrated with the lack of progress and the losses piling up over the last 3 seasons. So you could make an argument that maybe they're just saying that and they're trying to create a smoke screen in front of the situation for the Ducks, or this is a legitimate rumor. Now, I think a lot of people would argue that John Gibson is probably the face of the franchise for the Ducks right now. As guys like Drysdale and Zagras continue to develop, they're going to rely on a guy like John Gibson to kind of be the face of this team in the meantime. And he's really carried the Anaheim Ducks throughout most of this rebuild. So to move on from him now would just seem like kind of a loss there. And I think that's something that the Ducks and Bob Murray probably realized to some extent. Now, he's the 28-year-old goaltender from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which I know is going to already draw the interest. Earlier this spring, I actually made a video talking about John Gibson maybe going back to his home there in Pittsburgh as they need a goaltender. It seems like they're sticking with what they have with Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith, which even raises the question more for me that maybe they are waiting to see what happens with John Gibson and if they can maybe pile in on that. You also have to wonder if the Edmonton Oilers, who have swung and missed on a lot of goaltenders in recent history, going after Jacob Markstrom when he left Vancouver, Braden Holtby when he inevitably signed with the Vancouver Canucks, they've swung and missed on a lot of goaltenders. So a guy like John Gibson would definitely boost them up in the morale department and make them a better team. The question is, can they get the cap space to bring in a guy like John Gibson? I don't necessarily know. That's asking for a lot there. But I think there definitely would be some interest in that. He played in 35 games last season. I mean, you look at his career stats, a good goaltender, a .917 save percentage, a .258 goals against average, which, especially in today's NHL and with this rebuilding team, that's actually pretty solid. So John Gibson, as he continues to grow and maybe mature, maybe he wants to stick around in Anaheim. But for how much longer is really the big question there with John Gibson. But I wouldn't be surprised if at some point there were rumors that he is going to Pittsburgh again, or the Edmonton Oilers, if they have a really bad start with their goaltending situation with Koskinen and Smith, even with Alex Stalock, you wonder if they turn to possibly a guy like John Gibson or Anton Khudobin down in Dallas. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you think of the Anaheim Ducks? What do you think of Bob Murray continuing the teardown? Because should the Ducks continue to tear things down, or should they keep the vets they have, let guys like Zagras and Drysdale and Lundestrom and Steele and Comtois and Max Jones, let them all develop under these guys, Brendan Gooley, Josh Mahura, let them all develop? Or should they maybe move out some more guys and make the team younger? Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL, and more videos just like this one, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again next time.